Pros, save more on what you need to get the job done right. Right now at Lowe's. Get 15% off select custom entry and interior doors. Plus, save $80 on the DeWalt 20-volt Max 2-tool combo kit. Now just $169. And at the Lowe's Pro Desk, bring us your materials list and get a quote in minutes. Handwritten, a photo, or even a sticky note is all you need. Keep your jobs moving faster and on budget at Lowe's. Valid through 7/8 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, as I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base, which, of course, is our goal. I want to speak with you today very seriously about a president of the United States out of control. I think this is a critical moment, a moment which we need to consider with great care. The president of the United States berated Senate Republicans during a visit for a luncheon at the Capitol yesterday. It was a profoundly important moment. It was an attack, basically, to begin with, on 4 Republican senators who voted to restrict the president's power to make war. They were and are Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. You will recall that Bill Cassidy was defeated in the primary just last week after Trump endorsed an opponent. And he stood up and would not sit down when the president ordered him to sit down. This is how Bill Cassidy defined and explained what happened. I stood and said, "You have not told the American people what's going on. This was supposed to be a war that lasted 4 weeks. It's lasted 4 months. Our original objectives have not been achieved." And then the description continues. The 2 men went back and forth. That's what Cassidy said. And he matched his tone and volume until someone told him to sit down, and he tried to de-escalate. But Cassidy said he did not want to be bullied. I am voting for war powers until I get a briefing. Trump evidently repeatedly told Cassidy to sit down, according to a number of persons who listened. At one point, the president called him, a sitting United States senator, a lunatic. Now, let's be clear. Publicly, Trump said afterward that he had a really great meeting, but it wasn't a great meeting, and all you have to do is listen to what happened to know it. And the simple truth is that what Donald Trump did was unconscionable, completely predictable in terms of who Donald Trump is. But I want to be clear. The fact that the President of the United States, at a luncheon with Republicans in the United States Senate, took off on Republicans, calling the people who voted against him losers, does not build great confidence in this president. This is a matter of profound importance because there is more opposition to Donald Trump emerging every single day. The fact that this issue exploded over war powers, should a president be able to go to war unilaterally, I think is just the undercurrent of an excuse for those in the United States Senate, and I think more and more in the House of Representatives, who disapprove heartily of what Donald Trump is doing. I say this because when you have a president who is unbalanced, and I believe Donald Trump to be unbalanced, you have a problem. What do I mean by unbalanced? I don't think he understands the system of separation of powers. I don't think he understands fully the implications of going to war. And I believe when you have co-equal branches of government, the idea of creating a balance is critical. So we now know that an explosion took place in the United States Senate among Republicans. Now, this should have been a day when Republicans were blasting Democrats because, of course, what happened with Mamdani in New York, when you had left of center Democrats winning primaries, gave a perfect opening for Republicans to blast what is called democratic socialism. But Donald Trump created a distraction, an important distraction, a distraction which we all understand. The meeting, my friends, capped weeks of friction between Trump and Senate Republicans and added a new layer of frustration to Tuesday's vote, the first time the Senate had adopted a war powers resolution against this war. Granted, it was only 4 Republicans, but it is an indication. Trump has made clear that he is in no mood to compromise. And, well, that's the problem. And what did he do? I mean, it's very interesting. He canceled the signing of a bill overwhelmingly approved by Democrats and Republicans. The whole room was set up, the presidential seal in place, the flags in place. But the president decided that he was not going to go ahead with the ceremony until the Senate voted for his elections bill. Let me be clear. His elections bill is not going to pass the House. It's not going to pass the Senate. And for him to hold up a matter of consensus, the Senate bill on housing, is just, well, another indication of what you're dealing with in this president. His temper tantrum was and is an apt illustration of why this president has lost his balance in terms of the American presidency. There are many questions about Donald Trump which need to be answered, but the most important point is that he is the president of the United States. Now, that housing bill will go into effect if the president does not veto it. If he does not sign it, then in approximately 10 days. And that would mean that the Republicans and the Democrats who came together on the housing bill lost a great opportunity to make a statement of national unity on housing. By the way, it isn't the particulars of the bill which matter. And that's not what matters. What matters is the fact that for the first time, Democrats and Republicans could agree on a major piece of legislation in the Trump administration, and more than that, that the president, out of pettiness, decided to cancel the signing. We have a problem with this president. There's also the lack of transparency and truth. The president describes Lebanon and the war against Hezbollah in one way. The Israelis and facts on the ground prove it completely different in another way. The president maintains certain conditions exist in the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran, and we know that is not true. And so we deal with a credibility gap. For those who are old enough to remember the Johnson administration, you know what a credibility gap is and was. Maybe what we have now in Donald Trump is a Teflon president who simply gets away with it. But I have to tell you, I don't think so. There are many issues to be confronted in American politics, many issues of war and peace that have to do with the broader world. And yet, we have a president who seems determined to have it his way or no way. And that, my friends, should disturb each and every one of us. Let me remind you that when we talk about Iran, there is a great tension, a great diversion in terms of what is true and what isn't true. And that, my friends, should bother us. Because in the end, we have to have a way of knowing what's going on. If you think we're frustrated, imagine members of Congress where there is no briefing. We have yet to hear from the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of State on these major issues. And that, to me, is also a point of deep concern. So what do you do when you have a president of the United States who seems to have lost control, not of events, but of himself? At what point do we stand up and say, Mr. President, there's a problem. And that, my friends, is a real question. It is a question for all Americans to answer. Let me hasten to point out that we have another situation in terms of election rigging. As all of you know, Mitch McConnell, the former Republican leader in the Senate, who is still, until the end of this term, senator from Kentucky, was hospitalized. There is some speculation that this might be approaching the end for McConnell in terms of life. I don't know if that's true or not, but what I do know is that the Republican-controlled legislature in Kentucky voted that in the event of a vacancy, the vacancy in the Senate should not be filled by the governor. And you know that the normal process is that the governor appoints a successor. No, the Republicans in the Senate realize, and I'm talking about in the legislature of Kentucky, realize that the governor of Kentucky is a Democrat, Andy Beshear. And if that vacancy in the United States Senate were to be filled by a Democrat who is governor, he most assuredly would appoint a Democrat to the seat. And so what the legislature, controlled by the Republicans, did was to remove the ability of the governor to make the appointment. I realize that this is just politics, but do you understand, in the narrow confines of the United States Senate and who will control the Senate, this is a critical moment. And the fact is that traditionally governors of the states make the appointment and the vacancy is filled. This is another blatant abuse of power by the Republican Party, and I'm sure under the direction of the White House. This, my friends, is something else we need to consider, because this is simply a continuum of Donald Trump's meddling in elections. And let me point out to you that when he announced that he would not sign the health bill, his reason is because he wants his legislation, Save America Act, the Save America Act, to be implemented, which would limit the number of people who can vote. I point this out to you because I want you to understand the nature of the dirty politics, and I do believe it is dirty politics, which this administration is playing. I grant you, politics is not a clean business. I understand that very often politics are dirty. But you understand the Republicans are in a battle now to keep control of the House of Representatives and to keep control of the United States Senate. And if Mitch McConnell vanishes, it's one less vote in a narrowly divided chamber. These are critical moments, and the Republican Party is facing a very important moment. How will it continue, as a Trump rubber stamp or as those in the Republican Party who will dissent? The Murkowskis of Alaska, the Collins of Maine, the Paul of Kentucky, Cassidy of Louisiana, they are a minority in the Republican Party. But it's very clear that this minority is in control on a number of critical issues. And without them, Donald Trump is in deep trouble. Let me be clear. When the president can berate Senate Republicans on a visit to Capitol Hill for allowing a vote to block his war in Iran, it escalates a feud that has diverted Republican efforts and focus on election year affordability issues. And that, to me, is another important element. The Republican Party is going to have to redefine itself very soon because elections are coming in November. How will the Republican Party respond? What will they do? And let me ask you the more fundamental question. How out of control can Donald Trump be? There is no restraint on a president who is out of control because the Republicans won't allow any restraint. We better stop and think about this. Because to have the proper balance in our government, we must have 3 co-equal branches of government. And let me point out to you, the Supreme Court decisions still to come down before the end of the term are going to be critical and highly debated, and we're going to have a lot to talk about in the days ahead. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. Today's Wednesday, question and answers on Friday. Now is the time to begin thinking about the questions you want to ask, and I can't wait. Remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. This show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on advertising support. More to come. We've had some very good news on the advertising front. And this, of course, will help us to create more opportunities for Around the Political World with John Rothman, which, of course, is our goal. I want to say a big thank you to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast. Thank you, Gogo, for everything you do to make this podcast a success. And to all of you, who knows where we'll be tomorrow in terms of what's going on in the world. But I can tell you, you and I will be right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. And frankly, I can't wait. See you tomorrow.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.